Sometimes the people we overlook the most are the ones silently holding the world together. And sometimes the man pushing a mop is the only one who can make a helicopter fly. The test fails, engineers freeze, every screen flashing red. The billionaire CEO feels the room collapsing into panic. Millions of dollars, months of work, all about to go up in smoke. And in that terrifying silence, the only person who steps forward is the janitor no one ever noticed. Elijah always walked into the hangar long after everyone else had gone home. While the world slept, he swept the floors that genius engineers walked on, emptied the trash of men who built empires, and quietly blended into the background like a shadow that never asked to be seen to everyone else. He was just the night shift janitor, soft-spoken, polite, invisible. But Nova knew better. Nova, his bright 7-year-old daughter with galaxy-wide curiosity, believed her father could fix anything. And once, he truly could. Before he held a mop, Elijah held tools that saved lives. He was a military aviation engineer, the kind of man who repaired helicopters in scorching deserts, under gunfire with minutes to spare. He had rewired engines in the dark, replaced rotors with trembling hands, and brought pilots home when hope was almost gone. But lives like his never stay untouched. His wife, Liana, the love that kept him human through the chaos of war, died in a car accident just months after he left the service. The world he had built shattered in one night. The medals, the uniforms, the salute at her funeral. None of it meant anything anymore as Elijah disappeared from the life he once knew, and more titles, and more rank, and more machines worth millions. Only Nova, he traded military hangars for janitor closets, jet engines for cleaning carts, chaos for quiet, because peace was the only thing his daughter needed. He worked unseen, unnoticed, unimportant in the eyes of the world. But every night, he whispered the same promise to his little girl. I'll give you the life your mother wanted for you. People saw a janitor. Nova saw a hero. And soon, the world would too. Carmen Steele stepped out of her limousine like a blade slicing through the cold morning air. Everything about her presence demanded silence. The sharp click of her heels, the tailored steel gray suit, the way her eyes scanned the hangar with the precision of a surgeon. People didn't walk around Carmen. They shifted, adjusted, and corrected themselves, terrified of disappointing the woman who built the largest aviation empire in North America. Carmen Steele, billionaire CEO, architect of sky-breaking machines, the ice queen of the skies, the world, she was unshakable brilliance wrapped in polished armor. Her stare alone could turn senior engineers into trembling interns. Every board member lived in fear of her disappointment. Every journalist who attempted to soften her edges failed. Her empire was forged not by luck, but by obsession. An obsession born from a childhood scar she never allowed anyone to touch. She was 10 years old when the helicopter crashed. Her father, her hero, her compass was aboard. The machine malfunctioned midair. Reports blamed weather. Some blamed incorrect wiring. Carmen blamed herself because she was the one who had begged him to take her flying that day. He never came home, and from that moment, she vowed two things. She would build aircraft so perfect no child would lose their father again. She would never trust anyone to protect her heart. Not ever, she built walls higher than her skyscrapers. She lived alone in a penthouse where no laughter echoed. She trusted no one. Not her team, not her investors, not even herself. And today, everything she had built balanced on a knife edge. The biggest deal in her company's history, a global contract that could triple their empire, depended on one flawless helicopter demo. A revolutionary model. A machine that would change aviation forever. If it failed, the company's stock would crash. If it succeeded, Carmen Steele would rewrite history. The hangar buzzed with tension, engineers racing across the floor, technicians double-checking wiring, executives whispering like cornered prey. Screens displayed diagnostics. Every detail had been rehearsed dozens of times. And yet Carmen trusted no one. Not their confidence, not their calculations. She trusted only results. With her arms crossed and jaw locked, she watched every movement like a hawk. The slightest misstep, and someone would lose their job. Her empire didn't tolerate weakness. But even a queen can misjudge what she sees. That morning, as she strode through the hangar issuing orders sharp enough to cut steel, her gaze fell on a man kneeling beside a trash bin, tightening a loose screw on a maintenance panel that a janitor. He wore an oversized uniform, gloves, and the expression of someone who had learned to be invisible. His hair was tied back, his posture calm, focused. His hands worked with practiced precision. Too steady, too sure for a simple cleaner. But Carmen didn't notice any of that. She didn't care to, hey. Her voice cracked like a whip. You, janitor. He slowly looked up, surprised but not shaken. Yes, ma'am. You're blocking the walkway. Move the equipment somewhere it won't get in the team's way. Her tone was clipped, dismissive, absolute. He nodded quietly. Of course. But something in his eyes caught her off guard. Not fear, not irritation, not subservience. Just calm as if her harshness was nothing more than passing weather. Carmen hated that it unsettled her. She turned away immediately, brushing him off like he was dust beneath her heel. In her mind, he was just another background employee too slow to notice where he stood. Another person she'd never see again. That if someone had told her then that this quiet janitor would soon become the only man capable of saving her empire, her reputation, and the dream she had built from childhood grief, she would have laughed cold. Sharp, cruel, because Carmen Steele had no idea, absolutely no idea, that the man she dismissed was once the kind of engineer she would have killed to hire, a man who had repaired helicopters under fire, a man who knew more about rotorcraft than half her senior team, that a man whose past both mirrored her pain and challenged her loneliness. But forces far greater than ego or pride were already in motion. Her perfect demo was about to fall apart. Her empire was about to crack, and the janitor she overlooked, one she thought belonged in shadows, would soon walk into the light she never let anyone reach. The hangar was supposed to feel electric with triumph. Instead, it pulsed with panic. Red warning lights flashed across every monitor. Engineers shouted over one another. Technicians scrambled like ants whose hill had just been kicked apart. And at the center of it all stood the machine that was meant to change the world. The Helion X, 9. Carmen Steele's masterpiece. The helicopter built to restore her father's legacy and secure the biggest deal of her empire's existence. But today, the Helion refused to start. The ignition system, the crown jewel of the design, was dead. Not slow, not glitching, dead. Try the auxiliary battery, one engineer barked. It is on. Another snapped, sweat dripping down his collar. We already bypassed the primary circuits. Then why isn't it responding? Someone slammed a tablet onto a table. Another tore off his headset. The flight specialist cursed under his breath. They had tested this helicopter 22 times, 22 flawless runs. And now, on demo day, with international investors watching from the observation deck, it had become a $40 million paperweight. Carmen's voice sliced through the chaos like a razor. Everyone stopped. A heavy silence followed. Dozens of terrified faces turned toward her. She stood perfectly still, but there was a storm beneath her icy exterior. Her jaw tightened. Her fingers curled slightly, something only those who knew her well would recognize as panic. Millions hung in the balance. Her company's future hung in the balance. Her father's legacy hung in the balance. Explain, she commanded. The chief engineer swallowed hard. Ma'am, we don't know. Then find out. We're trying, try harder. But trying didn't matter. Not today. For all their brilliance, all their PhDs and accolades and prestige, none of them could coax this machine back to life. MIT, Caltech, Oxford, Stanford, the brightest minds in aviation stood helpless. On the observation deck above them, cameras clicked. Investors whispered to one another behind glass. Phones were raised, recording everything. Carmen could see headlines already forming. Steele Aviation failure, Carmen Steele demo, collapse, helicopter malfunction, shocks, Markether breathing tightened. Her vision blurred. Her chest burned the way it did the night her father's helicopter fell. Not again. Not like this. As the room spiraled into chaos, Carmen stepped back, hands trembling slightly, something she never allowed anyone to see. For a second, she felt 10 years old again, standing at the funeral, staring at the casket, blaming herself for something she couldn't fix. And that's when she noticed him. Elijah, quiet, still, unmoving amidst the storm, that he wasn't panicking. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't frantic or frustrated. He simply stood near the far end of the hangar, mop resting against his shoulder, eyes locked on the helicopter. Not at the chaos. Not at her. Not the failing screens, just the machine. Watching it the way a doctor watches a patient breathe. Watching it the way a man watches something he understands deeply. There was a strange familiarity in his gaze, calm, analytical, almost intimate. As if he wasn't looking at the helicopter, but looking into it. Carmen's brows furrowed. Why was a janitor staring at her machine like that? Something in her, maybe curiosity, maybe annoyance, maybe fear, pulled her toward him. She walked across the hangar, each step sharp enough to split concrete, and stopped directly in front of him. "You're staring," she snapped. Elijah blinked gently. "Just observing, ma'am. You're a janitor. What do you think you understand about a $40 million rotorcraft?" He could have shrunk, he could have apologized, he could have avoided her cold fury. But he didn't. He simply looked back at the helicopter, then at her, and said quietly, "Machines talk when something's wrong. You just have to listen." It was the wrong answer for a woman made of ice and perfection. Carmen laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that made nearby engineers flinch. "The brightest engineers in the world can't fix it," she said. "And you with a mop, think you can listen it back to life?" His voice stayed gentle. "I didn't say I could fix it. I said I understand when a machine is trying to say something." Something inside her snapped. Maybe the pressure, maybe the humiliation, maybe the fact that she had just watched her empire crumble. Whatever it was, logic left her entirely. Instead, she fired a reckless, cutting challenge straight at him. "Fine. Fix this helicopter," she said, her voice lethal. "And I'll kiss you in front of everyone watching." The room broke. Engineers nearly choked. Technicians froze mid-step. Someone dropped a wrench with a metallic clang, and in turn whispered, "What the hell?" Investors on the deck leaned closer to the glass. Carmen didn't blink. "But if you fail," she added, her voice ice cold, "you're fired on the spot." Elijah didn't react with shock or fear or laughter. He simply exhaled slowly, like he had been expecting this moment for years. People snickered behind him at a janitor fixing a helicopter, a mop versus a machine worth millions. Impossible. Absurd. Hilarious. But Elijah didn't laugh with them. He gently leaned the mop against the wall, took off his gloves, rolled his sleeves up, and in a voice calm enough to silence even the laughter, he said, "Show me the problem." For a moment, the entire hangar stood suspended in a strange, quiet disbelief. The janitor stepping forward, the heiress of the skies backing away, and every engineer witnessing an impossible wager. But Elijah wasn't thinking about the bet, wasn't thinking about the crowd, wasn't thinking about the kiss he had no intention of claiming. He was thinking about Nova, his bright little girl whose workshop lights had been cut off when he fell behind on payments. All she wanted was a corner to build her tiny. Machines, scrap metal airplanes, cardboard rotors she dreamed would fly. And he, her father, her hero, couldn't even keep her lights on. That thought alone steadied his hands as he climbed into the helicopter's belly. A warrior returns to the battlefield the moment Elijah touched the engine housing. Something inside him shifted. The janitor faded. The veteran engineer returned. His fingertips moved with remembered certainty, tracing lines, listening for vibrations too subtle for untrained ears that he unscrewed. Panels with rapid, practiced precision, the kind of speed only someone who had worked under gunfire could achieve. What is he doing? Is that even allowed? Why does he look like he knows what he's doing? Whispers rippled through the hangar as Carmen watched, arms crossed, eyes narrowing. Not with annoyance now, but confusion. Elijah slid deeper into the engine cavity. Wires, sensors, cooling ducts, rotor alignment, magnetic regulators. Everything looked perfect, and yet something was wrong. He had seen this once. In a desert with pilots screaming for rescue, with minutes before an enemy strike, invisible, silent. Deadly to engines, he grabbed a flashlight, angled it, and waited. There, a faint shimmered, a dusting of metallic particles, so fine they were almost air, a rare contaminant that disrupted electrical ignition, that a failure almost no engineer ever saw outside of war zones. Point one mistake in the manufacturing stage, and the entire system refused to start. No wonder the circuits are choking, Elijah murmured. They're suffocating. What did he say? An intern whispered. Did he just diagnose the entire system in 10 seconds? Another replied. But Elijah didn't slow down. He disassembled the ignition bay piece by piece, laying components down with reverence. Not for the machine, but for the promise he made to Nova. I will build a better life for you, and no matter what it takes. He cleaned every microfracture, every dust-lined crevice, every metallic grain, military precision, fatherly purpose. Then he rebuilt it. Not hurried, not panicked, just steady, controlled, complete. When he finished, the floor around him was silent. 20 engineers watched with the awe reserved for miracles. Elijah stepped back, wiped his hands, and nodded. Try it now. The moment that changed everything, the chief engineer swallowed. Pressed the ignition. For a heartbeat. Nothing. Then, VVROM, the engine roared to life. Smooth, stable, perfect. The rotor spun like silk, and warning lights, and errors, and trembling in the chassis. The hangar fell into stunned silence. One of the MIT engineers actually clapped a hand over his mouth. A Caltech specialist whispered, "Impossible." The Oxford engineer crossed himself. Elijah just gave a small, tired smile. Carmen slowly walked toward him, each step echoing across the silent hangar. The kind of quiet where everyone knows something big is about to happen. Every eye turned to her. People leaned over railings. Phones lifted. They remembered the deal. The kiss. Carmen stopped in front of him, just inches away. The Ice Queen, suddenly unsure of her own breath. Elijah, she whispered. He looked at her gently. Not with fear, not with desire, but with the calm of someone who had survived bigger storms. And then he said it, soft, simple, pure. I don't want your kiss. A gasp swept the room. He continued, voice steady. I just want the lights in Nova's workshop turned back on. The words hit Carmen harder than any insult, harder than any failure, harder than the helicopter blast that took her father. Because this man, who just saved her empire, asked for nothing for himself, just lights for his daughter, the little girl who dreamed of machines the way Carmen once did. Something cracked inside Carmen's steel, a fracture in the armor she spent her whole life welding shut. For the first time in years, her eyes softened. What's her name? She asked quietly. Nova. He said it like a prayer. Carmen inhaled a long, trembling breath. Then she spoke, voice no longer cold, just human. I'll restore her workshop, she said, tonight. Elijah blinked, stunned. And not just that, she added. Her voice broke, barely, but it did. I'm donating $50,000 to her school for a new STEM lab, named after her. Silence. Then, a single engineer clapped. Then another. Then the entire hangar burst into applause. Elijah stood speechless. Carmen looked away, afraid of what emotion might show in her eyes, because she realized something she didn't want to admit. This janitor, this father, was more heroic than anyone she had met in her empire. And for the first time since she was a child, Carmen felt something warm break through the ice. Nova had always been brilliant, but after the day her father fixed the impossible, something inside her ignited. She built robots after school, sketched engines in her notebooks, and spent hours in her newly restored workshop. Lights humming, tools neatly arranged, her eyes shining with dreams too big for her little hands to hold. 2 months later, she entered her first regional robotics competition. In '01, expected the quiet 7-year-old girl with paint on her shoes and braided hair to win against teenagers twice her age. But Nova walked onto that stage carrying something stronger than confidence, a legacy of love, perseverance, and sacrifice. When the judges announced her as the winner, the crowd erupted. Elijah cried for the first time in years. Nova lifted her trophy high in the back corner of the auditorium, hidden behind the curtain so no one would see her. Carmen Steele watched with her heart in her throat. She had no idea why she came in. '01 invited her. NO Press was present. and no business benefit existed. She just needed to be there. TOC, the little girl whose smile broke through her IC.TOC, the father whose courage repaired more than a helicopter. TOC, the world she secretly wished she belonged to. When Nova's eyes met hers across the room, she waved shyly. Carmen waved back. The slow stitching of two lives in the weeks that followed, something gentle began to grow between Carmen and Elijah. Not fireworks, not drama, not a fairy tale romance. Just healing, that a conversation over coffee, while Nova tinkered with gears on the table, that a quiet thank you from Carmen for teaching her engineers what compassion looked like. That a moment when Elijah patched a scrape on her hand, and she didn't flinch away. Tonight they stood outside the hangar watching Nova ride her scooter in circles, both laughing softly. Piece by piece, without forcing it, without rushing it, two broken lives began to fit together. The first kiss that truly mattered. One evening, they found themselves standing beside the same helicopter where everything changed. The machine that had saved her empire revealed his truth and rewired both their hearts. Warm lights glowed across the hangar floor. The silence between them was comfortable now, almost sacred. Carmen looked up at him, the coldness she once wore like armor now replaced by something fragile, something brave. "Elijah," she whispered, voice trembling. "The first kiss? I want it to happen because I love you, not because you fixed something." His breath caught. For the first time in a decade, Elijah felt a future he wasn't afraid of. He reached for her hand, carefully, reverently, as if touching something precious that might disappear. Their fingers intertwined. He leaned in. She closed her eyes, and under the warm glow of the hangar lights, amid the quiet hum of the machines that had shaped both their lives, they kissed, soft, emotional, real. Not a transaction, not a dare, not a test, just two souls finding home in one another. When they pulled apart, Elijah laughed, wiping a tear from his cheek. Nova's going to explode when she finds out. For the first time in years, Carmen Steele truly smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't come from victory or power or success, but from finally being seen, finally being held, finally being loved. They stood together beneath the golden hangar lights, a billionaire built from ice and a janitor forged from fire. No longer broken, no longer alone, but a new family, born not from perfection, but from healing. In the end, it wasn't the helicopter, the billion-dollar deal, or the applause that changed everything. That it was the small moments, the kindness of a father, the courage of a little girl, and the healing of a woman who had forgotten how to feel. Elijah, Nova, and Carmen didn't become a family overnight. They grew into one, slowly, gently, the way broken pieces finally find where they belong. And sometimes, the people the world overlooks become the ones who save it. Not with power, not with fame, but with love.